Ryan Reynolds here for, I guess, my 100th Mint commercial. No, don't. I mean, honestly, when I started this, I thought I only have to do like 4 of these. I mean, it's unlimited premium wireless for $15 a month. How are there still people paying 2 or 3 times that much? I'm sorry, I shouldn't be victim blaming here. Give it a try at mintmobile.com/save. Whenever you're ready.
$45 upfront payment equivalent to $15 per month. New customers on first 3-month plan only. Taxes and fees extra. Speed slower above 40 gigabytes. See details.
Canva presents a work love story like no other. Meet Productivity. She's all business.
The Canva doc is done.
Creativity is more of a free thinker.
Whiteboard brainstorm.
They're worlds apart, but sometimes opposites attract. Thanks to Canva.
The data is in the deck.
And now it's an animated graph.
Canva, where productivity meets creativity. Now showing on computer screens everywhere. Love your work at canva.com.
Thanks for listening to the Red Treehouse, where I tell scary stories to keep you up at night. You can listen to the Red Treehouse on your favorite streaming platforms, including Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Be sure to follow, like, and subscribe. Oh, and leave a 5-star review. You can follow the Red Treehouse on social media, on TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, and X. at Red Treehouse Pod. And if you have a scary story or topic you'd like me to feature on an upcoming episode, email redtreehousepod@gmail.com. Important note: sources for this episode can be found in the show notes. Content warning: this episode contains descriptions of domestic violence, child abuse, and child death. Listener discretion is advised. The home located at 14 West 10th Street in Greenwich Village is by all appearances unassuming. Nearly 175 years old, the beautiful brownstone is picturesque, with a red brick face and black accented windows and doorway. And, at first glance, it looks like so many other brownstones in New York City. The home also has a dark and scary past, and is considered one of the most haunted homes in the United States. In fact, the home is known as the House of Death. When I heard the name, I was immediately interested. Because for the building to be known as the House of Death, some bad stuff had to have happened there. I wasn't disappointed. Since being built in the 1850s, 22 people have died in the home, and many have never left. While researching, I came across a fascinating detail. Author Samuel Clemens, also known as Mark Twain, lived in the home at the turn of the 20th century, and some reports indicate that his spirit haunts the home even now. The home has seen its share of tragedy, including an especially gruesome murder in 1987. And it is possible the negative energy has built up over the past century and a half. For decades, the home has been declared to be cursed and has been the site of several paranormal investigations. In the late 1950s, author and actress Jan Bartel lived in the home and experienced scary paranormal phenomena. Eventually, she hired a psychic to help explain the strange occurrences. Within a short time, she moved out of the home and published a first-hand account entitled Spindrift, Spray from a Psychic Sea, which detailed every supernatural occurrence she had while living there. But here's the question: is the House of Death truly haunted and cursed? And if so, which entities haunt the beautiful brownstone in the heart of Greenwich Village? I'll share the details. You decide for yourself. I'm your host, Will. Welcome to the Red Treehouse. Built in 1856, the home didn't start as the House of Death. In fact, the home is an architectural marvel and is known as a Greek revival house. Even now, it's visually stunning. For years, the home played host to a who's who of New York's elite, including the wife of James Borman Johnston, who founded the Metropolitan Underground Railroad. After his death in 1887, his wife and daughter moved into the home, though it is not believed they experienced any paranormal phenomena while there. On August 9, 1897, Fred H. Andrew, a cycling celebrity, was the new owner of the home. On this date, the first of a long string of unfortunate incidents occurred. One article stated, quote, "During his residency, Andrew had a moment of reckless bicycle riding that caused him to hit a boy of around 8 years old. The boy suffered a broken leg, and Andrew was subsequently arrested." End quote. Even though it did not involve a person dying, it is believed this incident was the starting point for negative energy accumulating in the home. It is thought that hauntings are directly related to the amount of negative energy in a location. One article stated, quote, "Ghosts are attracted to negative emotions or negative feelings. So if you're keeping everything shut, not letting fresh air in or light, right there you're creating an environment that could attract negative energy." End quote. The House of Death gained its well-earned reputation over time, with each incident adding to the negative energy in the home. I mentioned earlier that Mark Twain rented the home from 1900 to 1901. By then, he was at the back end of his writing career, though he was still well known. At the time of his residency, Twain was experiencing bankruptcy, battling depression, and writing non-stop as he was desperate to make money. Though he died in Connecticut, ghost sightings of Twain have been reported on the staircase and on the first floor. One article stated, quote, "In the 1930s, a mother and daughter said they saw a ghost resembling Twain sitting near a window. Allegedly, the spirit said, 'My name is Clemens, and I has a problem here I gotta settle.'" End quote. Twain's ghost has been seen many times over the years, sometimes wearing, quote, "an all-white suit, drifting near the bottom of the staircase, displaying a sad expression on his face." End quote. Others have reported hearing, quote, "disembodied marching sounds everywhere in the vacated parts of the house." End quote. In 1937, the single-family home was converted into an apartment building with 10 individual units, and the ghost activity continued. Only this time, more residents moved in and experienced the scary occurrences. In 1957, Jan Bryant Bartell moved into the home and reported feeling, quote, "a monstrous moving shadow that loomed up behind her." End quote. She turned to look, but saw nothing there, and she couldn't shake the feeling that she was being watched. She felt as though the shadow was following her throughout the house, wherever she went. One article stated, quote, "The incident took several minutes, several cigarettes, cups of tea, and nips of brandy to shake off." End quote. She reported seeing a ghostly figure standing in a hallway, and in an act of courage, she reached out to touch the apparition. She described the sensation as, quote, "a substance without substance, chilly, damp, diaphanous as marsh mist or a cloud of ether. I could feel my fingers freeze at the tips. They were numb, and yet they tingled." End quote. The family reported smelling odd scents in the home, including rotting food that seemed to appear out of nowhere. A self-described psychic, Bartell reached out to a paranormal expert and medium to investigate the haunting in her apartment. The investigator claimed the home was haunted by no less than 22 spirits, including a woman in a white dress, a young girl, and a spectral animal. The medium claimed to feel something dead under the floorboards, quote, possibly a young girl, an aborted child, and a small gray cat, end quote. It was believed the aborted baby belonged to the widow of a deceased Civil War soldier. She'd lived in the home in the years following the end of the war. Bartell reported feeling the, quote, icy cold touch of a pair of unseen hands to the back of her hair and neck, end quote, and hearing a low growling coming from an unidentified location in the home. Despite their best efforts, Bartell and her husband were unable to cleanse the home of spirits and eventually moved away. After moving out of the home, Jen Bartell set out to write a book detailing her paranormal experiences. The book, titled Spindrift: Spray from a Psychic Sea, was published in 1974. However, after completing the manuscript, Jan Bryant Bartell passed away under mysterious circumstances, with some attributing her untimely death to the curse of the House of Death. Here is an excerpt from the book jacket of Spindrift. Quote, it started out as a search for an apartment, changed to a ghost hunt, became a deeper spiritual search that led through the occult and the esoteric philosophies, and concluded with Jan Bryant Bartell's death a few weeks after she had completed this manuscript, which recounts her experiences. When it all began, Jan Bartell did not believe in a spirit world, a world she could not see. She simply loved antiques and old houses. When she found an apartment in a townhouse in New York's Greenwich Village, on a quiet, tree-shaded street, her troubles began, and they did not let up for 12 years. Gradually, the spray from the psychic sea became more and more familiar to her, and, like a game of 10 Little Indians, deaths began to occur in the house. The first to die was a dog, Jan's own beloved Penelope. But, within 24 hours, she was to learn of the death of the first human tenant. Whether by heart attacks, suicide, or murder, the deaths came in rapid succession. In terror, with 9 little Indians gone, the Bartells moved far away from Greenwich Village, but the haunting followed them. After the completion of Spindrift, Jan Bartell became the 10th. End quote. That final paragraph is eerie. Paranormal activity has been reported throughout the home, with arguably the most famous being the woman in white. Some accounts describe her as wearing a white nightgown, while others claim she is wearing an actual white dress. Tenants have reported seeing ghostly figures wandering the hallways, walking through walls and doors, and floating up and down the staircase. Lights are reported to flicker, despite there being no record of faulty wiring. Perhaps the scariest and most tragic incident in the House of Death took place on November 2nd, 1987. Though I gave a content warning at the start of the episode, I'll offer another here. The following includes descriptions of domestic violence, child abuse, and child death. Joel Steinberg, a prominent lawyer, lived in the House of Death with his wife, Hedda Nussbaum, son Mitchell Steinberg, and daughter Lisa Nussbaum. At approximately 6:40 a.m., Hedda called 911 after discovering Lisa was not breathing. When paramedics arrived, they found a disturbing and terrifying scene. Lying unresponsive on the kitchen floor was 6-year-old Lisa, and soaked in his own urine and tied to his playpen was 18-month-old Mitchell. Paramedics soon discovered that Joel had beaten Hedda and Lisa Nussbaum in a cocaine-fueled rage. According to a New York Post article, quote, "After freebasing cocaine, Steinberg beat Lisa, leaving her bruised and broken. He went out to meet friends, leaving Nussbaum, too frightened of Steinberg's wrath, to help Lisa in the next room. Steinberg returned home late that night. He and Nussbaum freebased more cocaine until around 4 a.m., with Lisa still unconscious. It wasn't until 6:30 a.m. that Nussbaum finally called authorities." End quote. Hedda was covered in bruises and had several broken bones. And when paramedics arrived at the home, her face was visibly bruised, with her lips split open. Investigators discovered marijuana, cocaine, and drug paraphernalia in the home, along with $25,000 in cash. It was also determined that Joel and Hedda were not the biological parents of Lisa and Mitchell. In fact, they'd adopted both children illegally. Tragically, the beating inflicted on Lisa Nussbaum resulted in significant brain damage, and she was declared brain dead several days later. She was taken off life support, and her cause of death was determined to be blunt force trauma to the head. Initially, Hedda Nussbaum and Joel Steinberg were arrested and charged with first-degree murder. However, Hedda agreed to testify against Joel, and her charges were eventually dropped. Her testimony revealed an ongoing pattern of abuse towards herself and Lisa. Joel was ultimately convicted of second-degree manslaughter in the death of Lisa Nussbaum and served 16 years in prison. He was released in 2004. Since the tragic death of Lisa Nussbaum in 1987, the home has been described as, quote, kind of quiet, end quote. Currently, the House of Death is privately owned and resided in, and by all accounts, the dark, foreboding stairway continues to be the epicenter of paranormal activity. Growing up in New York City, I'd heard all sorts of spooky stories about haunted houses and buildings scattered throughout the city, but I'd never heard of the House of Death. On the one hand, it makes sense that the house has seen its fair share of tragic events. After all, it is nearly 170 years old. On the other hand, though, the accumulation of negative energy over that time may actually be the catalyst for both the poltergeist activity and the ongoing tragedies. Sometimes, there is just too much history to dismiss offhand. In researching for this episode, I could not shake two thoughts from my mind. First, don't judge a book by its cover. The home at 14 West 10th Street is stunning, but behind its beautiful facade lies a much darker, scarier reality. Second, what is true of the home can also be true of people. By all appearances, Joel Steinberg and Hedda Nussbaum lived an idyllic life. But real trouble and tragedy brewed just beneath the surface. I've said this in a previous episode, and it's worth repeating now. Sometimes the scariest monsters are human monsters. As we close this episode of the Red Treehouse, we're left with these questions. Is the House of Death truly haunted and cursed? And, if given a chance to spend the night by yourself, would you do it? I've shared the details. Now you decide for yourself. I'm your host, Will. Thanks for joining me in the Red Treehouse.